Welcome, family. Before we begin today's story, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments. I always love seeing how far this little community reaches. And if you enjoy deep, emotional mysteries, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. All right, now let's enter today's story. My daughter vanished in winter. Then a stranger left her quilt on my porch. In the dead of winter, when the nights were long and the wind cut like a blade, a mother searching for her missing daughter opened her front door one morning and found something chilling. A hand-stitched quilt, the same quilt her daughter slept with every night since childhood, folded neatly on her porch, still warm, as if someone had just placed it there moments before. But her daughter had been missing for 3 weeks. No footsteps in the snow, no note, no clue, just the quilt. And when the mother looked closer, she realized there was something sewn inside the lining, something that should have never existed. This is where our story begins. Chapter 1. The night she didn't come home. Snow had already started falling when Clara Bennett realized her 16-year-old daughter, Emily, was late. Emily never stayed out past 7 in the winter. She hated the cold, always wrapping herself like a burrito in her favorite quilt, deep blue, with stitched silver stars Emily had sewn herself when she was 9. Clara called her phone. Straight to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. Then the local school group chat began lighting up with messages. Hey, did Emily leave early today? She wasn't on the bus. Thought she went home with you? Clara felt her chest tighten. Her fingers were already trembling as she grabbed her coat. The wind outside howled, blowing sharp flakes across the yard. The streetlights flickered as she walked down the road, calling her daughter's name again and again. Emily, baby, answer me. But the only reply was the crunch of snow under her boots. She retraced Emily's usual path, the shortcut past Miller's Pond, the old footbridge, the line of spruce trees she liked to photograph, but everything was silent, half buried under fresh snow. No footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing. When Clara finally reached the police station, her heart was pounding so hard she felt faint. The officer on duty gave the usual line, "Ma'am, it's only been a few hours." Teenagers wander. Clara slammed her palm on the counter. Not my daughter. Emily would never disappear without calling me. Something in Clara's voice must have convinced him. Or maybe it was the fear in her eyes, because they filed the report immediately. By midnight, search teams were combing the woods. By morning, drones were flying over the frozen pond. Neighbors joined in, calling Emily's name through the heavy cold air. Days passed, 3 long, agonizing weeks. And nothing, not a jacket, not a shoe, not a footprint. Clara barely slept, barely spoke. The quilt, Emily's quilt, stayed draped over Clara's lap every night as she cried in silence. Until the morning of the storm. The wind was so loud she didn't hear the sound on the porch. But when she opened her front door, her breath froze in her throat. The quilt, Emily's quilt, folded perfectly, resting on the porch swing. The swing was still swaying, even though the storm wind had gone completely still. Clara whispered, "Emily?" But when she reached out and touched the quilt, it was warm. Someone had just been there, seconds before. And that was when she noticed a small, uneven lump stitched into one corner, something that wasn't there before. Something strange, something heavy. Clara's hands trembled as she slipped her fingers into the lining, and what she pulled out made her knees buckle. A Polaroid photograph of Emily standing in the snow, back turned, facing a dark figure in the distance. And the timestamp? Taken last night. Chapter 2. The photograph that shouldn't exist. Clara stood frozen on the porch, the Polaroid pinched between her shaking fingers. The storm clouds above her seemed to pause. The whole world felt suddenly silent, as if winter itself was holding its breath. The photo didn't make sense. Emily, wearing her gray winter coat, standing in a snow-covered clearing Clara recognized instantly. The old Maplewood lot, half a mile behind their home, a place abandoned after the last factory closed 10 years ago, a place nobody went anymore. Behind Emily, a tall, dark figure stood just far enough to be unrecognizable, a blurred silhouette, long coat, shoulders stiff, head slightly tilted. The timestamp in the corner read, 1:13 a.m. last night. Clara whispered, "That's impossible. That's impossible." Her mind raced. Who took this? Where was her daughter? Why return only the quilt? And why warm? Still warm? Her legs felt weak. She stumbled inside, locking the door behind her, and dropping the quilt on the couch like it had burned her. The house was too quiet. Every creak of wood sounded like footsteps. Every shadow looked like someone standing just out of sight. Clara grabbed her phone and called the detective assigned to the case, Detective Warren. He answered with a tired voice. "Mrs. Bennett, it's 6 a.m. Is everything Al? I have a photo of my daughter taken last night." No greeting, no hesitation. Silence on the line. "What do you mean a photo?" Clara swallowed hard. "It was stitched inside her quilt, the quilt someone put on my porch this morning." Warren's tone sharpened. "Don't touch anything else. I'm on my way." The detective arrives. By the time Warren arrived, the sky had turned a pale winter gold. He stepped onto the porch, examining the untouched edges of snow. "No footprints," he murmured. Clara shook her head. "That's not possible. Whoever left the quilt should have left tracks." He crouched down, brushing his fingers across the porch boards. "Wood's warm." Clara felt her stomach twist. "What does that mean?" "It means someone was here less than 5 minutes before you opened your door." Warren entered the house, putting on gloves and inspecting the quilt. He lifted the corner where Clara had found the Polaroid. "You said this was stitched inside." "Yes, right there." He nodded slowly. "That's deliberate. Someone wanted you to find it, but only you." Clara hugged herself, her mind spinning. Is she alive? Is that what this means? "We don't know yet," Warren said gently. "But this is the first physical evidence we've had since she went missing. Whoever took her is playing some kind of game." Clara flinched at the word game. "That figure behind her," Clara whispered, pointing to the photo. "Do you think it's the person who took her?" Warren studied it. Possibly, or someone she trusted. But Clara shook her head violently. Emily would never go into the woods at night. Not alone, not with someone she didn't know. Warren looked at her. What if she wasn't alone? What if she went willingly? Clara froze. Her heart thudded louder. "No," she said firmly. Emily was scared of the woods. She barely went out after dark at all. But something else was bothering her, a small detail she hadn't noticed before. She snatched the photo from Warren's hand and stared closer. "There's writing on the back." Her voice cracked. Warren took it carefully, flipping it around. The back of the photo had a message, written in uneven ink, as if the writer's hand had been shaking. "She's not cold." Clara felt all the breath leave her lungs. "What does that mean?" she croaked. Warren lowered his voice. "It could mean she's alive. Whoever has her, they're telling you she's not freezing, that they're keeping her warm." Clara felt a flicker of hope, the first in weeks, but it was quickly swallowed by fear. Because beneath the message, there was something else. A second line, written more hurriedly, almost scratched into the paper. "Find the second piece." Warren's brows pulled together. "Second piece? Piece of what?" Clara looked at the quilt again, but then something hit her hard. A memory. Emily years ago, sniffling on her bed after losing her favorite toy. Clara had promised to help her find it. And Emily had said something odd for a 9-year-old. If something's missing, Mommy, you look for the piece that feels wrong. Clara whispered the old phrase aloud. Warren blinked. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Instead, Clara slowly unfolded the quilt, running her fingers across each panel of fabric, star by star, stitch by stitch, until she reached one section, the only part of the quilt that felt different, slightly heavier, a little uneven. Her voice trembled. It's here. Warren leaned closer. Don't open it yet. Let me. But Clara was already breaking the seam with shaking fingers. And inside the quilt, hidden deep in the padding, she found a second object, a tiny, rusted key tied to a string of faded red yarn. Clara stared at it, feeling her skin crawl. A key to what? Warren whispered. Clara didn't blink. She knew exactly what it was. She hadn't seen that key in 20 years, not since her late mother used it to lock something away. In the attic of the old family cabin, the same cabin Emily had never been inside, the same cabin Clara hadn't visited since her mother's funeral, the same cabin. That sat exactly 1 mile from where Emily disappeared. Clara clutched the key, her knuckles white. Detective, she said, voice shaking, I think whoever has my daughter wants me to go back there. Chapter 3. The cabin we never spoke about. The tiny rusted key sat in Clara's palm like a living thing, cold, heavy, holding memories she had spent decades trying to bury. She stared at it so long that Detective Warren finally asked, Mrs. Bennet, what exactly does that key open? Clara didn't answer at first. Her throat felt tight, her breath unsteady, because the cabin wasn't just a cabin. It was a place tied to secrets she had sworn to leave in the past, secrets that still haunted her late at night when the world was too quiet. Eventually, she whispered, It opens a trunk my mother locked the year before she died. Warren leaned forward. What's inside? I don't know. Clara shook her head slowly. She never let me see. She told me, when the time is right, the key will find its way home. Warren raised a brow. Sounds symbolic. But Clara's eyes were hollow. No, she meant it literally. The drive into the woods. By the time Clara and Warren reached the old forest road, snow was already falling harder. Thick flakes drifted across the windshield, blurring the world into a pale haze. Clara gripped the wheel tightly. The cabin had always made her uneasy, even as a child. Her mother used to bring her there for summers. Long, quiet summers filled with strange noises at night, the scent of old books, and the feeling of being watched from the trees. But she never imagined she'd be returning like this. Warren looked at her as they turned onto the narrow dirt path. Why haven't you been back since your mother passed? Clara swallowed. There were things she kept up here, things she didn't want in the house. My mother was a collector of stories, old stories, strange stories. She believed certain objects had weight. She hesitated. She said some memories shouldn't be carried around. Warren stared at her for a moment, then back at the snowfall ahead. And you think whoever took Emily knows about all this? I didn't tell anyone, Clara whispered. The cabin's existence, the key, the trunk, none of it. Warren's jaw tightened. Then someone close to your mother must have known. Clara didn't respond. The truth echoed in her chest. Or someone close to Emily. Arriving at the cabin. The car stopped before a clearing where the cabin sat hunched in the snow like an old, forgotten creature. Its roof sagged under the ice. The windows were black. The chimney, long and used, looked like a crooked finger pointing toward the dead winter sky. Clara stepped out, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Memories rushed at her in fragments. Running through the grass barefoot, her mother calling her inside before sunset, the sound of whispers drifting from the attic vents at night. Warren approached the door first. Looks abandoned. No signs of entry. Clara shook her head. Whoever left the quilt, they wanted me to come here. They knew this place mattered. Warren pushed the creaking door open. Cold air spilled out like a breath. Inside, dust floated through the dim light. The old wooden table still stood. Her mother's rocking chair sat in the corner, unmoved by time. Everything looked exactly as it had the last time Clara was here. Untouched, preserved, almost frozen in memory. "Where's the attic?" Warren asked quietly. Clara took a deep breath. "Up there." A narrow staircase led to a small square door in the ceiling. Clara hesitated at the foot of the stairs. She remembered being a child, hearing her mother lock the attic door at night, hearing her whisper, "Something should sleep in silence." The attic door. Warren climbed first, testing each step before motioning Clara up behind him. The attic door stood exactly as she remembered: dark wood, iron latch, and a small keyhole that matched the key in her hand perfectly. Clara's fingers trembled as she held out the key. Her whole body resisted. "Take your time," Warren murmured. Clara closed her eyes for a moment, then inserted the key. It fit smoothly, too smoothly, as if time hadn't touched the lock. The latch clicked open. A cold shiver ran through her. Candle inside the attic. They pushed the door up and climbed into the attic. The air inside was freezing. The floorboards creaked beneath them. Dust-covered crates and old portraits leaned against the walls. Books with cracked spines lay stacked in uneven piles. And at the center of the room sat the trunk, large, wooden, with iron bands and her mother's initials carved on top. MB. Clara felt her throat tighten. Warren crouched beside it. "This it?" She nodded. Her hands felt numb as she knelt down. Together, they lifted the heavy lid. The hinges groaned. Inside, wrapped in old yellowed cloths, lay objects Clara didn't recognize. A broken silver locket, a doll missing its eyes, a stack of handwritten letters, a cracked ceramic bowl, and a small leather journal tied with faded ribbon. Clara whispered, "None of this belonged to us." Warren picked up the letters. "They're addressed to your mother." But something else lay buried beneath the objects. Clara brushed aside the cloths and froze. A second Polaroid. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She lifted it slowly. It was Emily again. Same coat, same snowy clearing. But this time, the dark figure was closer. So close that Emily was almost touching them. On the back, written in the same trembling handwriting, was a new message. "You're almost there." Clara's breath hitched, but Warren gently took the photo from her hand. "There's something else written below," he said quietly. Clara leaned in. Under the message, nearly scratched into the paper, was a single phrase: "Open the journal." Clara picked up the old leather journal with shaking hands. And as she untied the ribbon, a sudden thud echoed from somewhere below them. A slow, heavy thud, then another. Warren stood up fast, putting a finger to his lips. Clara held her breath, frozen in place, because someone or something was moving inside the cabin, and they weren't supposed to be here. Chapter 4. The footsteps below. Clara froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The sound came again, a slow, heavy thud from the floor beneath the attic. Not a creak from the old wood, not the wind shaking the walls. Something alive was moving through the cabin. Detective Warren raised a hand, signaling Clara to stay back. He scanned the attic for anything he could use as a weapon, grabbing an old fireplace poker leaning against a crate. The footsteps grew clearer, measured, deliberate, as if whoever was moving knew they weren't alone. Warren whispered, "Stay behind me." Clara nodded, clutching the leather journal to her chest. The thing that walked the hall. Warren slowly descended the attic ladder. Clara waited at the top, trembling, her ears straining to hear anything, a breath, a whisper, a shuffle. But the footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed the room. Warren reached the bottom step. "Who's there?" he called out. His voice echoed faintly in the cold cabin. No answer. Clara finally forced herself down the ladder, heart pounding in her throat. She stood behind Warren, eyes darting across the dim hallway. The cabin looked untouched, but different. Shadows felt longer. The air felt thicker. Warren inched toward the living room. The floorboards moaned beneath their weight. Then, a sudden slam. The back door. Clara gasped. Warren rushed forward, swinging the door open, but the yard was empty except for falling snow. No footprints. Nothing disturbed. It was impossible. There was no way anyone could move through fresh snow without leaving tracks. Clara whispered, "We're not alone here. We never were." Warren stepped back inside, locking the door. "Whoever it was, they didn't expect us to find the attic. That means—" "They've been watching," Clara finished. The journal opens. They return to the attic, shutting the hatch carefully behind them. The journal still lay in Clara's hands, warm from her grip. Warren nodded. "Whatever they want you to see, it's in there." Clara took a steadying breath and opened the cover. The first pages were filled with her mother's handwriting, flowing, elegant, slightly slanted. But the words made Clara's skin crawl. "If you are reading this, something has awakened." Warren frowned. "Awakened? What does that mean?" Clara turned the page. "Our family carries a burden older than this cabin. It does not belong to us, but it follows our bloodline. I locked these items away, so the next generation wouldn't feel its pull." Clara whispered, "My mother never talked like this. She was practical, logical, not mystical." But Warren pointed to the next line. "Do not let the child wander alone. The code calls to them first." Clara's breath stuttered. "Child? Does she mean me? Or Emily?" The journal went on. "If you hear footsteps in the empty rooms, do not answer." Clara looked at Warren, fear rising in her chest. "It wasn't a person," she said softly. "It wasn't a human thing walking down there." Warren held her gaze, but didn't deny it. They turned another page. "Candle, a hidden family secret." The next entry wasn't written like a diary. It felt more like a confession. "Your grandfather tried to destroy it. He failed. I hid the pieces and objects we never touched, waiting for the day someone might bring them together again." Clara frowned. "Pieces? Like the Polaroids?" Warren nodded slowly. "Pieces of a puzzle. Someone wants you to follow the trail." Clara turned the page again. Her mother's voice seemed to whisper from the paper. "If the quilt is returned, it means the watcher has chosen a new bearer." The word watcher made Clara's blood turn cold. Warren asked carefully, "Clara, did your mother ever talk about someone following her? Or the family?" Clara shook her head. "No, never. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't like this." But the journal wasn't done. The watchers appear in winter. They bring back what they take, piece by piece. Warren muttered, "Just like the quilt." Clara felt nausea rise. Emily was taken by something connected to my mother's past." She flipped to the last written page. The ink smeared, the words frantic. "If the child disappears, go to the clearing at dawn. Bring the quilt. And whatever you do," Clara's breath caught as she read the final line, "do not follow the figure unless you're willing to lose your way back." Footsteps again, but closer. Suddenly, a floorboard directly under the attic let out a long, drawn, dragging creak. Warren stiffened. Clara's heart stopped. This wasn't the hallway. This wasn't the living room. Something was standing right beneath them. As if listening, waiting for them to speak again. Warren mouthed, "Don't move." Clara clutched the journal, her pulse thundering. Another sound rose from below. Not footsteps this time, not breathing, but a slow, soft hum, a low, chilling melody, a tune Clara recognized instantly. Her daughter's lullaby, the one she used to sing to Emily as a baby, being hummed by a stranger inside the dark cabin. Clara covered her mouth to keep from crying out. Chapter 5. The humming in the floorboards. The humming drifted through the wooden planks, soft, steady, and eerily familiar. Clara pressed a hand to her mouth, struggling to breathe. Her eyes filled with tears as she recognized the melody. The same lullaby she sang to Emily every night until she was 10. But the voice humming it now was wrong, too slow, too deep, too cold, like someone imitating affection, but without any real warmth. Warren's grip tightened around the fireplace poker. He leaned closer to the attic floor. The humming stopped. Silence spilled into the room, like water seeping into cracks. Clara whispered, "It knows we're listening." Warren nodded, "And it wants you to follow it." Clara shook her head violently. "That thing isn't my daughter." Her voice nearly broke on the word daughter. The cabin breathes. A sudden gust of icy wind blew through the cabin, rattling the attic door behind them. Dust swirled. Books toppled over. The entire structure groaned, like it was exhaling after being held too long. Warren whispered, "Stay behind me. I'll go down first." He slowly lifted the attic hatch and descended the ladder, each rung creaking like a warning. Clara waited at the top, shaking, clutching the journal and the quilt as if they might protect her. When Warren reached the bottom, he scanned the room. "Clara, come down." Slowly. Her legs felt like stone, but she climbed down, each step shorter than her breath. Her feet touched the cold wooden floor. The living room looked exactly the same. Nothing out of place, nothing missing, and yet the air felt charged, like a storm was waiting inside the walls. Warren stepped toward the kitchen doorway. Clara followed, her heart pounding. Snow light from the small window cast pale shadows across the floor. Then Clara saw it, something lying on the ground, a footprint, but not a normal one. A single perfect print in the dust, not barefoot, not a boot. A small print, Emily's print. Clara's breath hitched. Her knees weakened. "That's her size," she whispered, touching the edge of the print with trembling fingers. She was here. Warren crouched beside her, fresh, not more than an hour old. Clara felt hope and terror collide inside her chest. A message left behind. "Clara," Warren said, pointing toward the counter, "look." On the kitchen table lay something that hadn't been there when they arrived. A folded sheet of paper weighted down by a small, smooth stone. Clara recognized the stone immediately. It was one Emily used to keep on her nightstand, painted with little white stars. She made it in 4th grade art class. "Emily," Clara whispered, tears blurring her vision. She grabbed the paper, hands trembling. The writing wasn't Emily's. It was the same shaky handwriting from the Polaroids, uneven, sharp, almost carved into the page. The clearing at first light. "Come alone. Bring the quilt." Warren took the note, eyebrows knitting together. "They want you alone." Classic hunting tactic. "Hunting," Clara echoed. "Yes," Warren said firmly. "Whatever is doing this, person or not, it's isolating you." Clara turned the note over. There was more, a faint smudge of charcoal, and beneath it, drawn in frantic strokes, a map, a rough, hand-sketched map, marking the forest behind the cabin. A crooked line showing the path to the clearing, a circle drawn around one spot with a small symbol beside it, a star. Not 5 points, just one, a single lonely star. Warren leaned in. You know where that is? Clara nodded slowly. That's the old fire pit clearing. Emily used to call it the wishing circle when she was little. My mother brought me there once, just once. She said it was a crossing place. Crossing, Warren repeated. Clara flipped open the journal with shaking hands. She found a passage that made her blood run cold. The Watchers don't live in the woods. They move through them. They use the cold as a doorway, a crossing between what is lost and what wants to be found. Clara whispered. And Emily, she wouldn't go there by herself. Someone led her. Warren said quietly, and they're leading you now. A final sound before dawn. As Clara folded the note, something shifted in the hallway, a faint creak like someone brushing against the wall. Warren spun, raising the poker. Nothing. Then, a whisper. Soft, fragile, barely audible. Mom. Clara's heart cracked. It was Emily's voice. Her real voice. Not the humming imitation. Emily, baby, where are you? She rushed forward, but Warren grabbed her arm, grounding her. Clara, stop. That's how they lure you. But the voice came again, trembling, scared. Mom, it's cold. Clara broke down, sobbing into her hands. The sound of her daughter crying out through the walls was unbearable. Warren tightened his grip on her. That's not Emily. Not here. Not now. It's a fragment. A mimic. They're trying to get you alone. Before dawn. Clara clutched the quilt to her chest, shaking violently. When do we leave for the clearing? Warren asked softly. Clara wiped her tears, breathing hard. At first light, she whispered, just like the note says. Warren nodded. We'll go together. But Clara's face turned pale. The note said I have to go alone. Warren's jaw tightened. You're not going anywhere alone. Not with that thing in the woods. Clara stared at the journal's final warning. Do not follow the figure unless you're willing to lose your way back. She looked at Warren. We don't have a choice, she whispered. They have my daughter. Chapter 6. The Quilt That Never Stopped Speaking. Snow fell again that night. The same soft, quiet snow that covered the porch the morning the quilt first appeared. But this time, everything was different. For the first time in months, I slept without waking up in panic. For the first time in months, my house didn't feel like an empty box full of unanswered prayers. For the first time in months, I felt my daughter's presence again. But the story wasn't finished. The final visit, 3 days after Lily was found alive in the abandoned cabin, I heard a knock on my door, not loud, not rushed, just gentle. I opened the door expecting the sheriff or a neighbor or even Emily checking in on me. But instead, there he stood, the stranger in the green coat, the same man who left Lily's quilt on my porch, the same man who watched over her for 2 whole nights before she was rescued. He held his hat in his hands, snow dusting the brim, his eyes humble and tired. Ma'am, he said, voice soft, I just wanted to make sure she made it home. I didn't know whether to hug him or fall to my knees in gratitude, but instead, I simply asked the question that had burned in me since the beginning. Why did you help her? He looked past me toward the living room window, where Lily's quilt hung, drying by the heater. My sister, he whispered, went missing when I was 12. No one ever found her. If someone had helped her, just one person, maybe she'd still be here. His voice cracked, and right there, in the cold doorway, I finally understood. He didn't do it for praise. He didn't do it to be a hero. He did it because he knew what it felt like to lose family to the winter. Before I could thank him properly, he stepped back into the snow. I'm just glad your girl came home, he said. Then he turned and walked into the falling flakes, disappearing the same way he had appeared, quiet, humble, and untraceable. I never learned his name, but I will never forget him, healing the winter inside us. Lily changed after the ordeal, not in a broken way, but in a wiser way. She held the quilt close every night, saying it felt warm in a different way, almost like someone else was keeping watch. She started writing again, stories about winter, survival, kindness, and the silent heroes that walk among us unnoticed. I changed too. My house wasn't empty anymore. My mornings had laughter again. My nights had peace again. But most of all, I stopped seeing winter as the season that took my daughter away. I began to see it as the season that brought her back. The final message hidden in the quilt a month later. I finally worked up the courage to fully inspect the quilt, stitch by stitch. And that's when I found it, a tiny embroidered phrase, almost invisible on the inside hem. No one is ever truly lost. I don't know who stitched it. Maybe Lily did before the accident. Maybe someone else added it later. Maybe it was a message meant for us from the beginning. But it became our motto, a reminder, a promise, a truth. Because sometimes the world sends help in the quietest ways. A stranger on a snowy road, a quilt left on a porch, a flicker of hope in the deepest cold. Thank you for watching, my dears. Before you go, tell me where you're watching from in the comments. I love seeing my family from all over the world gather here. And if this story touched your heart, even a little, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video so others can feel the warmth too. Because remember, just like the message hidden in that quilt, no one is ever truly lost. Not as long as we keep looking. Not as long as we keep loving. Not as long as we keep hope alive. Stay safe this winter, and I'll see you in the next story.